I really think we need to reimagine work.
System tells you that your value comes from what you produce, which is of course bogus. You know, the more productive you are, the whatever, and like the idea of like work
Mhm.
has become so removed from, I don't know, meaning, purpose, identity, and like it doesn't need to be those things, but for some people
Yeah.
it is those things, and there's this, tension. So I don't know, for you, I'd love to know, how do you personally define the concept of work?
It's interesting because my definition of work has changed. So I started working when I was 17 at a answering service. And from there, I loved it. I loved talking to people. I liked that I wasn't in front of them. I enjoyed that part. And from there, went into a sales position. And I liked that. It was a little bit harder to like deal with people, but I found that I was really good with computers. I'd already taken some computer classes in school, so I really got into technology.
People are like on this path of like, this is your menu of options in your life, and like you pick one of them. Anyway, in an ideal world, how do you enter the workforce?
Hmm. Entering the workforce, there is, to an extent, a leap. You have to start somewhere.
So the company that I worked for, they sold cell phones. So I had my first cell phone while I was working there. And I did stay in sales for a little while. I even sold cars, but it was hard having that face to face. And I was really horrible at breaking the ice. It was very challenging for me to like talk about interesting things, I guess, for people. And then I would hyper like think about that, and then it would make me even more isolated.
And you're in that process of exploring and reflecting. So finding something that feels like it matches your identity, your needs, your values, but accepting that there will be a level of compromise. I mean, work is work. People work ideally not just for the paycheck, but part of it is because there's a paycheck.
My upbringing, my father was a sales rep, and he worked really, really hard. He didn't have a high school diploma, and he was like a hero to me because he worked so hard for our family. And it wasn't easy because I could see the struggle that he had. And my mother was always like, maybe not quite an executive assistant, but pretty close to that. And she had really good work ethic. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. I thought that I was supposed to find this job and that I would just be really good at it, and, it would be amazing. It was hard.
As kitchens tend to attract multiply marginalized people, because I've been in a lot of kitchens with other trans folks, with other neurodivergent folks, where it's like, okay, so these expectations are built around cis bodies and one neurotype. And my body actually can't be here for 12 hours. Otherwise I start having heart palpitations.
Healthy employment relationship is like all relationships, families, friends, romantic. It should be bi-directional. You should be putting something in, but also getting something back. So as you're exploring different types of work and ways to integrate into the workforce, be careful to not only be assessing yourself, but be assessing the context and how you perform in that context, and also what those employers offer, and how they create fit as well. There's two sides to that, and often it's all too easy to go internal and take all the responsibility. It worked or didn't work because of me, but that's not really how it is.
And then you add on top of that the personal life stressors that can come up. And any of those things, one can have difficulty. I can have difficulty managing, become dysregulated. The hyper focus means that I tend to get and stay distracted from work. Those are all stressors. And then once I get like any of those stressors, that can start to lead, that it goes unresolved, can lead to, it really gets me into a vicious cycle of a dysregulation spiral. So I get stressed out, I get anxious, that which leads to mental and physical tension. I go into defensive behaviors, worry, self-protective avoidance, distraction. There's dysregulation, including sleep, which leads to less capacity for attention, less capacity for motor skills and motor planning, less executive functioning, which then can lead to more and bigger mistakes, hyperfocus, getting stuck on the wrong details, self-justification, externalizing blame, attacking perceived sources of threat, all of which go over really well in a work environment, leading to more negative feedback, possible discipline, job loss, bad reviews that limit my potential to advance and my potential for access to organizational power and privilege that could actually help me fix the problems that are affecting me.
The idea of shifting social norms through community connection with this vision of like, what like, can I rethink some things in my life that aren't working for me or maybe are working for me? And can I learn about my access needs in that way?
It was really hard for me to get into that social place of like knowing how to interact with people in the office, and then also how to break away and do my job if I was having trouble. I'm very good with routine. So, you give me a spreadsheet or a Word document, like I know how to write a letter. I'm very good with grammar. But if it was out of that wheelhouse, that would be a lot more challenging for me. And that's when I started to notice a lot more. I mean, I had already noticed differences growing up, but I didn't really like what I was doing.
When we think about work in terms of like meaningful occupation, often like the meaningfulness of that is kind of left out.
I think the most important thing is to build that framework of assessing and reflecting. I think I like these things. I think these are important characteristics. I think this is my identity. And then exploring it and reflecting on how you responded, but not holding yourself to a very specific definition of who you are or what your identity is or what's important, because that will change over time. So it's more about having that framework to explore it than it is to identify yourself. And it'll continue to change throughout adulthood. So it's about having a structure to reflect and assess and explore more so than it is like figuring it out. Because just as you figure it out, we are people and we are dynamic and we change.
And at a young age, I realized, well, we're working because we have to, so that we live this life, so that we have cars, we can buy clothes, we can have a house. Because that's all I was thinking. Like, I'm supposed to, make this so much money at whatever age. I'm supposed to have children at this age, and I'm supposed to have a house. Like, there's this timeline that I'm supposed to follow. And it was very challenging for me. And I would always be like, why? Why do I have to do this? And it's not working for me. Like, what is supposed to happen isn't happening. And I would tell people, I'm like, we're working because we have to. But if we didn't have to, would we be working?
How do you define work? What does work mean to you? Like, this starts so much earlier than entering the workforce.
An important consideration for work that is often overlooked is how it matches a person's individual values. And that can happen in a lot of ways. You can directly approach a value, like I like helping other people and work in human services. But I think sometimes we fall short at expanding that definition. If you like helping people, you can also work in retail or in customer service. So overlaying what your values are with what the job is and how it feels and operates practically. So part of that is assessing your values, and those will change over time, and there's no right and wrong values necessarily. So there's a level of self-understanding in that exploration. And I use exploration intentionally because work can be a way to explore those values or how to tap into them.
I think it's very often we talk about like what we do like for work rather than who we are and the gifts we have to offer to our communities. So being able to share our gifts, sometimes our gifts might be tied to the work that we do, but sometimes our gifts are not tied. That we could be artists, we can be other things in our lives that often don't get to be shared in our workplace or in our communities.
I think people don't realize that maybe they're really good at doing something, right? But they don't enjoy it. But it's what they do, and they're getting money doing this. But at the end of the day, they're just like, that wasn't a fulfilling day.
I could see really drilling into what are the benefits of workplaces and the benefits of being a worker, and who are those benefits for and who are they not for? Like, how are things by design right now either working or not working?
Yeah.
Where are those gaps in our in the safety nets that support workers or that could support everyone? But I this is where I start to think about, we talk about benefit cliffs, we talk about the sort of that increasing space where workers are earning more but not having safety nets that keep pace, and therefore in a unintended consequence of actually taking people out of work, right? The idea of
Right.
like, we want people to be in the workplace, but if they don't have the supports they need for stability in their housing and stability in their healthcare, they will only work so much or they can't keep working, and they will
Yep.
come back out because that's how they get their basic needs met and the resources they rely on. And that's a stuck place for a lot of people who would like to be unstuck.
A lot of people work in areas that tend toward exploitation and dehumanization. And some of those folks are like, I'm just doing this until like I make it in a creative field. I'm just doing this until I am finished with this certification that's going to let me do this job that I really care about. And some people are like, I've been forced to do this because of racism, because of classism and discrimination in hiring practices, so on and so forth. And some of us are there because we want to be, and because we think that it's important that people do those jobs, and that whether you are working a job that tends towards exploitation and dehumanization, or you in your day-to-day life are profiting from other people working those jobs, whether it's buying your coffee at a coffee shop that a barista makes, or like going to the grocery store where someone is stocking the shelves. Those are jobs that like are inherently like full of dignity. Like that work matters on a fundamental level and is important and is noble. And like, even if you want to do it, being treated poorly doing those kinds of jobs can really weigh on you. And like, it's important that you're doing that work, whether you continue to do it or not. You should be proud of it.
We all people to an extent want to contribute something and offer and help in some way. You might want to find a way to meet that psychological need through your work, where you can contribute and help others, or you may have robust opportunities outside of work where you don't need to use work to balance that.
Idea of like a person growing up over time, and this idea of like more like a holistic transition that starts way earlier, this path to thriving, right? Like can you talk about that?
For me, thriving, flourishing is the goal, whether it's at work, personally. Honestly, it's about personal flourishing and thriving, and how does work contribute to that? And it can do it in different ways. Is it helping you expand your boundaries or push your horizons, or is it reinforcing a strength and some part of your identity and how you self-identify? Does it give you community? Does it expose you to new community?
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think a lot of times it's like accidental how your path evolves, like the experiences you have, the people you're around, whether these experiences are affirming. Like, even, I mean, there are people, I mean, let's even think about, transition age youth, right? Like, so this idea of, you make it to middle school and you're like, I don't know, do I even really know what I like? Do I know what I like? Do I know what I dislike? Do I know what's even important to me? I don't know, because there's all these social pressures that say conform, conform. And the bigger picture, the bigger like the systems that you are in are explicitly training you to conform and comply. And like, that is so counter to this idea of this individualistic thriving, I think.
Often there are jobs, roles, positions out there that don't name our gifts, but that we have the offer that would be beneficial to our communities. And so we call that opportunity creation, where we take people's gifts and create opportunity for that, for them to maybe possibly make a living out of that thing and be able to thrive.
Tell me, what does that look like? That sounds incredible.
Oh, so I'll give you a really great example, and I mean, I think I can name names. I don't think she would mind at all, but I'll name the names because I think it's a excellent recent example of opportunity creation, which we have many. So Anna is a Latina woman in the state of Vermont who, when we were trying to do, not trying, when we were putting together a BIPOC financial wellness empowerment program, she had some expertise in this area. And so we, along with another individual, Shonda, were able to create financial 101, 102, 103 financial wellness series for BIPOC people through the vision of the root, but the intellectual property of these individuals, and be able to share that in an affinity space with BIPOC to help lift them up in their financial literacy, wellness, awareness, and education. Through that program, we then created another program that was a BIPOC centered home buyers program, where we prioritized BIPOC people and their partners to being able to have the information, skills, and resources that they need to buy homes. Because if we know the history of BIPOC people trying to own homes, there are still racist policies that are on the books that prevent us from being able to access resources that maybe other people who are not of color can access. So through this, we partnered with Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, one of our local affordable housing agencies here in Southern Vermont. And ultimately, be through relationship and through those gifts that Anna held, we were able to hire her for this program. And she was able to develop a full program for her own ideas of what this looked like, through her own trainings, through her own awareness, through her own experiences, and create a curriculum for this home buyers program, with collaboration with the Root, with collaboration from Windsor and Housing Trust, where we served over 20 BIPOC households in this programming. This now has turned into, now Anna is employed by Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, and she is starting the BIPOC Financial Empowerment Program that is her own gifts that will carry throughout the state, providing these tools and resources and awareness to primarily our BIPOC communities. And so not only did she get to share her gifts, she got to make connections and relationships, and she got to be paid what she is worth for and valued for who she is. And this is just as one example of many opportunity creations that we've been able to create, specifically prioritizing BIPOC communities.
An incredible story. So you really, it's like, it's identifying the strengths of individuals within your community and investing in them. Not only are they serving like you're investing in them, they are investing in the community, and you've created, like, together you've created something that didn't exist before. Do you have any advice for people who are stuck in a workplace culture because they have also been taught, like, you get a job, you do the thing, so you can do the things, right?
Right.
Advice for people who they know they need freedom, they know they need autonomy, but like they don't imagine they could possibly start their own thing.
Right. Hope has always been what's driven me. And I have always thought that if there was opportunity, and you might not have it right now, it might not even be tomorrow. The job that I had before we started Limelight Restoration, I decided to be a little different with my resume. And I'm very good with resumes. And it was always like, you know, you put where you worked and then all the stuff that you did. And I'm like, but I do so much more than that. Like I have way more to offer than just office stuff, right? So on my resume, I put that I can run heavy equipment. I drive four-wheelers. Like I put all of my like country girl side on my resume on purpose. It's incorporating so many of my personal interests that I like. So what I have to say with where people are maybe feeling stuck and they're unhappy because they're doing the thing that they think they're good at and that's all they're good at. What do you do when you're not at work? What could you put on your resume? Because those are skills. You don't have to have a job that says you can do this. If you're a great seamstress or you're good at, you know, marketing stuff and making things, I think that there's a different way at looking at jobs that you may have not thought you were qualified for if you look at it as an overall picture of what you can provide. When I have gone for interviews in the past, when I was younger, it was so intimidating and scary. As I got older, I learned that they're interviewing me for the job, but I'm also interviewing them because I don't know if I want to work here. I've been let go before. I have had people not like me stand up for myself. And I didn't want to work for a company where I didn't have a voice because I have a lot to say. And I think that people should not be afraid to tell their employer what they need or that they're sick or that they can't come in.
We're caught in systems that we prop up that we have to navigate and cobble together, and we think the system is bigger than us, but it's us. Like we are the ones that have a role in this, and we can disrupt it.
Yes. And I think like, you know, like we were talking about this morning with like email, like all the chaos that comes in, right? Like, so you have to be able to have the spaciousness to
Yes.
zoom out, to reimagine. And when you're like in the weeds, in the chaos, you can't even do that. So you like stick to the systems because it preserves your bandwidth, even though that known quantity is ruining your life, right? So I don't know what my access needs are necessarily, but I'm in situations that either work for me or they don't work for me. And when they don't work for me, when someone, for example, has this frame of access, my access needs were not met. It's not like, because I think sometimes if we don't explicitly name that bidirectional relationship, that interaction of environment and person, the idea of this is about a goodness, a fit for that person in different environments with different people like that, if that frame was not explicitly named for many brains, they don't have it. And so they move through the world thinking that they really are told explicitly. I mean, a lot of implicit, but explicitly, like, this is how we do the thing. This is how you apply for a job. This is how you interview. Like, this is how you show up. This is how you sit still in your classroom. This is how you line up in kindergarten. Like, it's one way. As opposed to this, like the idea we talk a lot at Brain Club about the double empathy problem, where, like it's not that there's like one correct way to communicate. It's about, it's this relationship of, this mismatch of perspective taking, way of seeing the world, communication style. And like, that's where the breakdowns happen.
I think it's very important to recognize that it's okay for it not to be the right fit.
And applies to really everything that so it can apply to work relationships, it can friendships, romantic partnerships. It's like, it's everything. It's okay, especially because as people change over the course of their life, they need different things.
Exactly. I think it's less about, can I do the job? Did I do the job? Was I good at the job? And more about the fit, which is half you and half the context and how you're supported in it.
Yeah. And because a person changes over time, organizations change over time too, and that like divergence is okay. And I think that then like we bring in elements of, you know, of abandonment and like attachment issues that come into work, and you know, rejection sensitive dysphoria. I need to tell my employer that it's time for me to go. Oh, you know, like how dare you, you know, just like all this stuff that really then someone goes off into their world, and these experiences I think stay in people's nervous systems, and they go into even healthy work environments, and they really have trauma physiology.
I think that if you're looking for a job, if you're in a current job and you're not happy, somehow you need to find your voice, even if you need someone to advocate for you, to step in and say, hey, you know, can you use the language that I need for my employer so they understand what I need? Because people don't need to be getting fired because they're standing up for themselves.
I certainly think that there's ways that employers can be sensitive to a variety of stressors and sort of, you know, do this universal design thing, but it still doesn't get away from the power imbalance.
There are people who they are working, but they're being harmed, like actively harmed at their places of employment. And they, you know, it's like a privilege to be able to say, like, I'm gonna look at what do I want to do with my life. Like the idea of vision casting is like such a higher level brain thing when you're like in the trenches trying to survive. And anyway, I really would love to figure out, and maybe it's about partnering with other organizations. Like All Brains Belong is like a little startup nonprofit. Like we can't hire all of our patients to do stuff and like make enough money to support themselves, enough to leave the terrible jobs where they're, you know, they're being discriminated against and traumatized all day long.
Out of that, but I think it comes with relationships. It's about how can we collaborate? How can we figure out where are the points that we really meet together, right? Where is those intersectionalities that we can support each other? Where are those crossovers? And it's about brainstorming, right? No pun intended, of like really coming together, having that think tank to come together to see more of what's possible, because exactly what you said is like now we're not paying Anna anymore. That money is coming from a variety of other different places. And that's what we can do is we can leverage our relationships and connections with the resources that all of us have when we come together and we're really willing to make that commitment to each other. So I think that's what's most important.